A blessed afternoon to all the administrators, faculty, and students of the CEAP member schools all over the Philippines. I'm Miguel Carlo Abadines, currently the Advocacy and Information Management Officer of the CEAP, and I will be moderating this afternoon's session. We are live both on the CEAP Facebook page and the CEAP channel on YouTube. No? So feel free to continue sharing this to your fellow teachers and administrators. No? So we will be talking about a very important topic this afternoon, and I hope many from our CEP community will be able to join our discussion. But as we start our session for today, let me invite everyone first for an opening prayer. Let's spend a moment of silence as we invite the Lord into our session today. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, we want to give you praises for having given us the opportunity to gather as one CEAP community to celebrate our lives as educators. We continue to thank you for the gift of life and that you have allowed us to participate in this wonderful ministry that you have called us to. Be with us in our session as we renew ourselves. Lord, be with our speakers as they share their time and knowledge with us on this very critical topic regarding the elections. Grant them the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, and may your words of consolation, hope, and encouragement be shared through them. Much change will be happening next year, and we hope that you will help us discern our actions as a community. We continue to keep in mind our fellow brothers and sisters who are struggling through this pandemic. Grant us the grace to have deep compassion for those who are most in need and to respond generously to their needs. For our frontline workers, protect them and keep them safe through this pandemic. All this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, so we've had an exciting 3 days thus far in the CEAP Congress. And I hope you have been energized and inspired by the different talks and speeches coming from various members of the CEAP community. So far, four learning sessions have already been conducted, and I hope you were able to attend and engage in them. No? So our talk today is the second to the last learning session covering the PCSS domain of community engagement, and it is entitled Heeding the Call to Social and Political Love, Critical Reflections on CEAP's Engagement in the 2022 elections. Before going to our learning session proper, allow me to first give you some reminders. First, a reminder that you only need to attend one session for each day. No? Day 3 yesterday and day 4 today. No? So to get a certificate for the whole Congress, submit an evaluation form for one session for each day and a general evaluation form at the end of the conference, which will be posted after the closing mass on day 5. Again, you only have to submit a total of 3 evaluation forms to get a certificate, 1 evaluation form for 1 learning session each for day 3 and day 4, and another general one for the whole Congress. The evaluation forms are available at the end of each of the learning sessions and will be up until 7 p.m. of the same day. The evaluation link will be posted in the comment section of the video, both on YouTube and Facebook. And you can also find it in the program section of the CEAP Congress virtual hall at congress.ceap.org.ph. All videos of the different sessions will, of course, be saved in the video section of our Facebook page, and our YouTube channel. So you can watch them again if you miss it, if you missed out a session, or if you found the session really useful, you can share it to your administrators and even your students to learn from these sessions. Secondly, we continue to encourage you to explore our virtual Congress site and visit our educators exhibit. You can interact with our partners in education there, and you may also win in the raffles. You may also offer your petitions inside the prayer room. Just click on the link inside the prayer room and you may type in your intentions. Our CEAP National Christian Formation Team, our prayer warriors, will be praying for your intentions. As in all our previous webinars, the registration to the Congress is also free. But if you wish to make a donation to help defray our expenses in staging this Congress, or to the Kapatirang Kamagong Fund to help our small mission schools, you may deposit them in the bank account flashed on our screen. So you can check it out. We thank the schools who have donated and already as they registered in the Congress. Thank you so much for your generosity. So thank you. This really was very helpful. Of course, there are other ways to support us. Thank you to the technology. No, you can send us some stars via Facebook. No, you can do that as well if you want to support our webinar. No? Last, as the discussion is ongoing, we encourage you to post your questions or comments at the comment section on Facebook and YouTube. We will be asking these questions, and we will try our best to read the questions and all the comments to come out in the Q&A section. Continue to share these learning session to your networks with the hashtags, hashtag CEAP hashtag CEAP and of course, our hashtag for the election. And sana i-type niyo yan, hashtag vote love. Ayan. So we will be voting love. Cheesy, no? Pero vote love talaga tayo this coming elections. All right. So let's go straight into our discussion. As mentioned in my introduction, today's conversation will be revolving around politics, citizenship, and the 2022 elections. We'll deep dive and try to understand better what church teachings say when it comes to political involvement, and to also get ideas from our resource persons on how we can actually engage in the 2022 elections, which is important. So once we know the principles, it's also important to know how exactly and what exactly can we do as the CAP community in the upcoming 2022 elections. And so without further ado, let me invite our first presenter to share with us the Catholic Church's stance on political involvement. So maraming tanong po yung mga tao when it comes to ano yung stance ng church natin, no? So the Catholic Church's stance on political involvement, as well as giving us guiding principles we can use as we discern how we can engage in the upcoming elections as a church community. We have Reverend Adrian Colmenares of the Society of Jesus, who currently serves as the Associate Director for Programs of Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, our champion for the Engaged Citizenship Program. So let us give him a warm round of applause.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you once again to CEAP for the invitation. I'm not sure though if they had a choice with me, but anyway, allow me first to just share my initial reflections on this based on what Carlo mentioned as the questions, no? And I look forward to our discussion later on after all of us in the panel have presented our thoughts on heeding the call to social and political love, critical reflections on CEAP's engagement in the 2022 elections. The teacher in me could not help but start first with a few objectives, at least for this 15-minute brief input that I want, so that at least I can already frame what I want to share with you. First, some points on our role as educators, especially as Catholic educators, and political involvement, how the two are deeply tied together. They cannot be separated from one another. Second is to redefine, to revisit, or to even revise our understanding of engaged citizenship. That's why the invitation to look at elections, but also beyond, more importantly, also what is beyond election day. And then I'd like to share some bits and pieces from Pope Francis's recent social encyclical that I think can be used as guiding principles for our electoral engagement. And so I'd like to start first with this quote from John Paul II. I'm sure we've heard many times already how Pope Francis's quote on good Christians should meddle in politics. Now, we've heard that time and again. At baka iniisip nyo, bago lang ba to? But actually, this is already a very long-standing tradition in our church. Even St. John Paul II says here in his encyclical, Evangelium Vitae, ang ganda kasi, especially this highlighted phrase, of sharing of Christ's mission in the promotion of human life through service, charity, in personal witness, various forms of volunteer work, social activity, and political commitment. I think this was a deliberate word choice to use "and," not just "or," no, as if it's something that we can just do away. Anyway, I'm doing the other thing, so I should not be politically committed already. On the contrary, that is a very common conception still among a majority of our fellow Christians and Catholics, as if political commitment, social political commitment, is not part of our it's not part of the sphere of our Christian life. But because we are human beings, we have to define more clearly, this stance for political involvement. And I'd like to start first from a particular point that our Jesuit general mentioned to us when he visited us in the Philippines before the pandemic started, is that part of our role is to help recover the nobleness of politics. Kasi binanggit niya that the truly human person is a political person. But not in the sense of politics that often comes to mind when we hear of corruption, of all the plunder, the graft cases, but really politics to acknowledge it as the arena for promoting the common good, witnessing, an opportunity to witness to the gospel values vis-a-vis social phenomena, to appropriate that to our current realities. Otherwise, how else are we to live our Christian lives if not being in touch with the flesh and blood realities? Kasi yun din naman ang tawag sa atin ni Kristo. Sapagkat yung Diyos natin, ganun din ang kanyang ginawa sa kanyang buhay. Di ba? Nung nagsakatawang tao siya. But to also consider the broader definition of politics, this was something our Holy Father Pope Francis, but even his predecessors have often emphasized in a lot of their writings and in their teachings, that politics is that sense of coming together to make decisions about the common life. Because all our decisions, all our actions, our choices are interrelated. And one decision, especially of those who are in power or in authority, affect a lot of people, and more people are gravely affected than others. But here, I would like to also emphasize that political involvement is really a function of our faith commitment. Uh, I can spend a whole lecture or perhaps a whole semester on this. In fact, this is something that I teach to my students in the college. But for our purposes this afternoon, I just would want us to invite you all to just already uh, uh, believe in this or assent to this. But you can have the further discussions about this later on in the open forum. No? And so, uh, I'd like to frame this more clearly in terms of the role of Catholic education. And I think it's helpful that we go back to that message that Pope Francis shared to educators at that opening on the meeting regarding the Global Compact on Education. For us Catholics, education is not just for education's sake, but it's really, again, a function of our Christian commitment and a way to be able to help also transform not just the lives of the people entrusted to us, but of the very society in which we live in. And so when he talks about Catholic education, it should engage society at every level. And I like this particular quote because Pope Francis reminds us of where is this society that we need to engage in. He looks at the young, those people who have urgent needs, and this opportunity to really look at places of poverty, injustice, and to be able to transform people's lives vis-a-vis what is going on in our respective contexts, provinces, countries, cities, wherever we may be. And he goes on to say that really the value of our educational practice is measured not simply by the results of standardized tests or rankings or PASCO accreditations or whatever, no? But really the ability to affect the heart of society and to help give birth to a new culture. Education in a Catholic Christian context is always formation. And formation is not, it's never just intellectual or purely individual for our case. It always takes on that social dimension and spiritual dimension as well. That is why for a particular context here, education is really for God and for country. Shout out to Ateneo de Zamboanga, no? This is their university motto. Um, and so part of And a lot of Catholic educators would say that part really of the goal of Catholic education is conscience formation. And I think this should be a guiding principle in terms of how we are to engage in electoral activities. It is true that members of the clergy, of the Catholic clergy, are not supposed to take partisan stance, but that does not prohibit our lay mission partners from doing so. We have and we are encouraged to discern with them, to form consciences, how they are to respond given what is proper to their respective vocations in the political sphere. But I want to highlight that while we are always called to respect the conscience choices of people, we must not forget that part of the obligation is also to help form consciences. That's why there should be some form of transformation and depth in thinking. And I think that can happen in our university settings, in our school settings. Um, and so here I would always say that we have a treasure trove of principles to help form and inform our consciences. Just by looking at the principles of Catholic social teachings, we are told that these can serve as principles for reflection, criteria for judgment, and directives for action. Whether you are looking at the list of principles as elaborated by the US bishops or by our Second Plenary Council of the Philippines, all these from human dignity to integrity of creation to a preferential love and option for the poor, dignity of human work, these can help serve and inform how our choices, how our programs can be framed, and what it is that we are supposed to teach uh, not just our students, but sometimes I feel that we also need that formation for our faculty and staff, and even to the extension communities that we partner with for our outreach or for our apostolate. That is a service that we can extend to them as well. I'd like to go on to also say that aside from conscience formation, is really a deep sense of truth that informs our charity. What do I mean by this? When I think of the academe and the community extension programs that a lot of our schools have, I think we can offer this as a service to them. I know of several schools and universities that do a lot of research work with the social slant, and it helps inform programs and interventions that they make with their students, with their partner communities. And I think this is good. This is one way to get ourselves engaged and to have that kind of skill of social listening, listening that is grounded in the reality of the immediate poor in our areas, but also to allow us to take a step back and figure out and ask ourselves, why is this happening in our localities? Or perhaps, why is this still happening in our country right now? And to even ask ourselves the questions as church and school communities in the coming elections. What issues can the schools or the group of schools in your regions, cities, and provinces rally behind in the coming elections? What issues, what particular concerns in the immediate communities, not just of the school communities, but especially the other partner communities you have? How can we be the ones to dictate these things, these items as part of our election agenda? So that we do not just simply rely on what our candidates promise us, but we can demand that these are the very things our public servants. Take note, I do not use the word officials. I use the phrase public servants. are supposed to deliver as a public good to us. No? And so part of it is to even recognize the long game of engaged citizenship. We can be so hyped up right now with preps for election, voters education, mobilizing volunteers for quick counts here, ballot vote monitoring, so on and so forth. But we have to realize that election is not the end game. It's a crucial point in our democracy, in our nation at this point. But active Christian social political commitment goes beyond casting our votes on election day. Part of it is to understand that our rights and our obligation as engaged citizens, as Christian citizens, is not just about casting our votes or choosing our candidates. Part of it is also to recognize that we can call them out for their lack of accountability and transparency, for some atrocities that they may commit, or for the negligence of duty that they will be responsible for as they assume public office. No? And part of this is really to consider and to have that sense of depth in understanding social phenomena. I think it is part of our job as people in the academe to help bust certain myths about development, about politics, about economics. The myth of the strong man or of development that is only economic, over or even of a dichotomy of our faith commitment and social political life, or the myth of a progress that is only influenced by simply one political ideology, or that the myth of reform that is only focused on systems. When we think of all these things, no, a lot of us still end up believing in this, but part of that challenge for conscience formation, for research, for depth, and for engaging in the truths of our social life is to bust these myths and really provide alternative principles and ways of thinking. And I think this is where we educators and our academic communities can help out. Of course, and sorry for this shameless plug, but even in SLB, this is something that we offer to a lot of communities and school communities. We're extending this invitation to a lot of you here in the CEAP network. If you would want to be part of our training sessions for Kwentuhang Bayan. So I think Carlo will or someone from CEAP will share this invitation. This is something that we do in a lot of communities. It's our broader, more beefed up version of voters education, and we would love to be of help to all of you during this coming election season. So I would like to go to my last few points. I know I just have a few minutes left, and maybe to share some of the things that I found striking from Pope Francis's recent encyclical, and I think this can help deepen our understanding of our socio-political involvement. This particular quote I find interesting because I'd like sometimes I think that our politics is myopic, or if ever it is far-sighted, it's far-sighted for the political interests of the few and not for the reform of systems. Um, and I think this is something that we can espouse whenever our academic communities, our students, our extension communities are involved in any form of discerning electoral agenda that we want to rally behind in the coming elections. It should consider things integrally and with an interdisciplinary approach, having to dialogue not just with our own faith and moral claims, but even with the sciences or the social sciences. Far-sighted in the sense that it should be a politics that is focused on reforming and coordinating institutions. Especially here in the Philippines, when our politics is very personality-based. But a good and solid democracy requires that institutions need to be reformed and strengthened, so that we do not simply allow ourselves to be left at the mercy of our politicians or our elected public servants. And I think this is a very interesting insight we have from our Holy Father in his recent social encyclical. But more importantly, as a Catholic institution, we have to also help form our students who can later on take on and assume public office, but always know very well that part of that experience in our institutions should be an encounter with the victims of injustice and poverty, and hopefully to befriend these very people whom they can actually fight for, who they can actually work with later on in building a hope-filled future. I share this quote from Dean Brackley in his article on higher standards in Catholic education: the necessity of encounters. And yes, I am suggesting this even if we are in the context of a pandemic where face-to-face encounters are still risky and dangerous. But I've heard stories of how our different educators and educational institutions have found creative ways of still managing to facilitate this engagement and yet still keep our students, our faculty, and our staff healthy. And so, those are some reflections. Sorry kung medyo bitin, but I hope the discussion later on will be enriched by this. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Rev. Comenaris. It was actually a great starting point, no? Malaman, and really a lot of reflections and challenges for us actually to take as a CAP community. I guess what's beautiful about it, no? There are really clear lines, no? Being drawn between the faith commitment and our commitment to the political, no? And I think as much as there is a lot of denial and it's used against as a weaponized against the church, no, na don't get involved in politics, I think it becomes very clear, no, that there are principles that we can hold on to use, no. And how I especially took the message, no, about the idea of speaking truth, right? Which is a special role, especially of Catholic schools, right? Our commitment to truth and to challenge the lies and the myths, right? That are being propagated in society. And to a certain extent, in this electoral period, there are many lies, there are many myths that are being propagated. And it's a point of reflection for us. What do we say against that, right? Where do we position ourselves when lies are being thrown? No? I think that's one powerful thing, no, that I took, and of course many other things that later we will hopefully deep dive into, no, into our open discussion. So now that we have at least a better grasp, no, of where the church stands, no, on this topic of political involvement and connection to our faith commitment, no, and of course, Reverend Ed Colmenares pointed us towards the idea of the Catholic social teaching as guiding principles. Let's try to ground this a bit, no, on the reality of where young people are, the students that we actually that we are teaching, that we are forming, no. So to give us a better understanding of the role of the youth in the upcoming elections, as well as his thoughts of how young people engage in politics today, we invited attorney Tonton Neri, no, who is currently the director of Xavier University's Center for Legal Assistance and was co-founder and former chairperson of the Oro Youth Development Council in Cagayan de Oro. So let us give him a warm round of applause.
Right? Maayong hapon sa tanan. So pretty much, if you ask young people what their role is in 2022, and I think the answer is very clear. The answer is our role is to vote. And it presupposes a duty on our part to register to vote. So yung hope natin is that a lot of young people who are 18 during the day of election already got registered. But for this afternoon, no, we will try to ask the question, is our role really just about voting? And if that's the question, it really should lead us to an analysis of what our roles are, not just in 2022, but in this whole mission of democracy building. So to answer that question, I would like to lay this premise first now, that democracy building involves political participation. And I think we've heard Brother explain it beautifully through the lens of our Catholic faith, that this is part of our mission. But you mentioned the word politics to young people. Parang instantly, a lot of young people treat this as a very toxic word. Parang mata-turn off na sila if they hear it, no? Because they always relate it to corruption and evil, which is very contrary to what we've heard earlier, no? That historically, politics is really that communal act of deciding for the common good. So to make politics more relatable to the young people, I always frame this through this way, that politics is essentially relationship building. Relationship building. Because in some way, we all have relationships, diba? If you are in a relationship with your, and hindi lang to romantic, by the way, like relationship with your parents, there's a label for you. You're called a child. Anak ka ni ano. In a relationship with a school, you're called a student, right? Parishioner in relation to your church. So there are certain labels here. But the relationship that we will be talking about this afternoon is this relationship with this entity we call the state, right? Or we could call it the country. It's the state. It's not a person, but it's something present in our everyday lives. And I think we don't make pansin of this relationship with a state. And with that relationship, we also have a label, right? We call ourselves in relation to the state as, it starts with the C, we're called citizens. So we have labels for that. And as a relationship, we have certain obligations to one another, diba? And I think it is good, at this point, I think it's good to ask for those young people who are in a romantic relationship, what are you looking for in a partner, right? What are the obligations that you demand from your partner? Is it openness, transparency, honesty, commitment, pinaglalaban ka, diba? So these are the certain things that we look for and we strive for in our relationship, in our romantic relationship, so that parang it will flourish and bear good fruits, give us a sense of joy and meaning, diba? But actually, if you look at it closely, there is no difference in what we are looking for in our politics. We want that in our relationship with the state, we want to have those things: transparency, openness, accountability, commitment to serve, responsiveness. Diba? But now, since this is a relationship, hindi dapat to one-sided. And I think we have to emphasize this over and over again to our young people, na in this relationship with the state, we also have to do our part, right? Aside from asking what we want our partners to have or what our public servants must possess, I think we should also ask what are our obligations as citizens? What are our roles as citizens? So now we will try to unpack that later on, but at least we have established that it takes two to tango. It takes two parties, the state and the citizen, to co-create a better society. Now, next point about this relationship. But like many romantic relationships, if it is one-sided, if the other side is not being honest, if the other side is not being transparent or not open yung communication lines, or the other side is cheating, diba? We're not only hurt, but we are also crushed emotionally. And I ask this question, is that the same if our relationship with the state fails? Will you feel that same level of emotional pain in your heart when you hear your favorite public servant lie? Or merong accusation of corruption? I don't think it's the same feeling, di ba? I don't think it elicits the same emotional pain. But I would like to believe and I would like to argue that it is also painful because the impact is long-term and pervasive. It might not be emotional and personal, but it's still a social pain. And the product of this failed relationship between citizen and the state is inequity, which breeds poverty. So imagine if the state begins to close its doors from people's participation, what kind of laws will be passed? Who will it serve? Right? So, ganyan lang nan. Politics essentially is relationship building. And if one partner, one side of the equation doesn't fulfill its commitments, of course it will fail. So, confronted with this reality, how do we then build a relationship between us as citizens and the state? No? How can we ensure that this relationship becomes a basis for creating the common good? So I propose the following roles on the part of the young people in fulfilling their roles as engaged citizens. So yeah, that's supposed to be the picture on the result of a failed relationship with a state. The first role, I have 3 roles here. We'll try to unpack this one by one. Examine ourselves, the leaders, and the community. Better citizenship, engaged citizenship, starts from where we stand, di ba? We have to first recheck our values. What are the things that you value? Do you value freedom over order, justice, human rights? And I think the school is a very good place for students to probe their values or recheck their values. And I think the social formators in our school should play a vital role in guiding our students in rechecking, reevaluating their values. Because the values are the lens in which we see the world, and they're also the guiding post that informs our daily decisions in life. The second action point is verify your sources. This is in part of the examination. And examining our leaders in our community, the whole point of this action point is do not contribute to the ecosystem of falsehood. Parang, I think Carlo mentioned this in his synthesis na the best way, our role really as a Catholic institution should speak truth and challenge the lies, di ba? And the schools play a vital role in providing students the tools for them to have knowledge, tools for them to verify if the things they're sharing or reading are true or not. Right? And that is part of this role of being critical citizens. The third action point is think systems. And this, I think, I could relate this to Brother's talk earlier about hindi lang, schools should not just teach students how to be economically viable, but they have to also possess this knowledge of analyzing the social ills for them to know how to contribute in addressing those problems. In particular, in examining problems for our community, let us not just see the problem at face value. No, we have to probe things deeper. And I think parang the best example for me is a discussion about poverty with your students. What is poverty? What is the cause of poverty? Because to be honest, example in my own experience, a lot of students would tell us na poverty is really because they're lazy. It's their choice to be poor. And a lot of people would tend to say that if you die poor, it's your fault. No, and I think as a Catholic institution, we have to challenge the thinking that it's not a personal. Who wants to die poor? There is an unjust structure that puts them there. It's an invisible hand in a way, and that should inform our examination of our social reality. The second role is decide to make your voice an influence. Now that you know where you stand as young people, I think you must make a conscious effort to transform your ideas, your voice into influence for the common good. So we're trying to make a dichotomy here. Your voice doesn't necessarily spell out influence. So for us to effectively engage political structures, we have to convert that into influence. Now, what are the building blocks for amplifying that? I keep on telling my students also na if you don't know where to start pinpointing your social advocacy in life, you better start with the SDGs. Very practical option. No, what are the things that the and I think this is important because this connects them with their values, di ba? A lot of young people tend to be more environmental. So you also have, as teachers, you have to also facilitate ano pa yung values nila sa life that led them to this form of activism. For example, many students also prefer entrepreneurship, right? You have to also connect that with their value. And the teacher should provide them the resources to analyze more their area of advocacy. So I think SDGs talaga ang best place to start. And you can just Google this naman and you could see the gaps where the students can study and actually draw a plan of action in their projects. The second point here is build your skill set. We keep on telling the students, passion to make a difference is not enough. Diba? You need to have the skill set and the competence to do that. So again, it is the role of the school to provide these skill sets, and how they build their change projects based on their SDGs and their values. And for the third point, build a community of mentors. Again, this is a very critical role for the schools. No, that you have to value intergenerational effort in building a better society. And the school is a rich place for mentors. And feeling ko nga, parang we are in this field of development work. We're sustained, even it's so challenging. We're confronting a lot of social problems. But I think the energy that sustains us also comes from our mentors. We have this community of support and mentors that keeps on nourishing us. So let's also have that in mind when we communicate or design our programs in school. Now for the last role, demand better governance. I keep on telling my students as well now that we live in a Republican state, democratic state. Our desires are channeled through representatives whom we delegate our sovereign power to through the election. So this means that kita ang principal. The public servants are the agents, right? We have to keep on reminding them that it's not the other way around. And how do we actually operationalize this concept? Well, I think it's a good idea that young people should also think about grading their leaders. Yung mga accountability systems where young people could actually check the services of City Hall or their police stations if they actually fulfill their mandates. No? This is one way to remind the public servants that they occupy a position of public trust, and to remind them who are the bosses, who are the principals, who are the rights holders, right? The second action point is participate in formal bodies. I think the school also has a role to play in providing students a channel for participation in formal institutions, in democratic bodies. Ano bang example nito? Is there a program where students can actually get involved in the barangay assembly? Is there a program that encourages them in participate in the Sangguniang Kabataan or the Youth Development Council for that matter? So there are a lot of venues where young people can actually formally engage the decision-making process. And I think the school could provide those channels. What I could think of, they could involve in the local school board, in the solid waste management board, health board. And the best thing here is they could engage those formal bodies based on their SDG advocacies. So parang the students can see the continuum of how their advocacies could actually translate into policy directions. And that can be actualized if we provide them a chance to participate in formal bodies. And the last action point, organize. Remind the students, and I think this ties up everything. Engaged citizenship is not just confined to an individual effort. The full power of engaged citizenship can only be unleashed if it's nurtured within the context of a social movement. right? And change happens, policies get passed because of organized people. And I want to emphasize this because ang kabataan, they have this organic power to organize. Be it based on the barkada or even social media organizing, they could do that. No? But if we could empower them with the tools and the reason why this is important, I think we could really mobilize a lot of young people to channel their energies to social movements. Right? I keep on telling them all the rights you enjoy now, minimum wage, 8-day work week, work day, all of them were won because people organized. Hindi yan binigay ng powerful. They were all demanded by the people. And then just to now provide a very concrete example before I close. This is how it happened in our experience in CBO. How the young people actually pushed for a better structure. Well, manifested through a CDO scholarship code. Before, the scholarship program of the city is very, very small, around 300 beneficiaries. And then merong provision that says those who are only physically fit can apply for the scholarship program. Physically fit. And then it's only for those who got very high scores. So we the youth organizations, because the city hall opened a space for youth to participate, began to do consultations. And I will never forget this. Merong isang student nag-ask during consultation. He asked na bakit yung scholarship program is only for the matalino, for the intelligent. Bakit wala naman for those who got 75, but wants to go to school? And that actually opened up the idea na we should expand this program to not only include those who are academically gifted, but those who are financially in need, but meron namang doesn't fail the tests. Hindi naman mataas yung grado. Right? And because of that, and because a young person representing the youth with disabilities is represented in the council, they were able to propose the scrapping, the abolition of that discriminatory provision requiring physical fitness as a part of the requirements. This is a concrete example of how young people actually made a difference. And from a 300 beneficiary program, it became 3,000 with different tracks, academic and even financial need-based. And this happened because young people were given a chance to participate in the decision-making process. They were given a space to voice out. And also, the environment was good that the ordinance was then passed. So this is a very good example of how democracy works through the eyes of the young people. And to end, ito lang yung last message ko. I think our role as schools should change mindsets and hearts. Parang I think brother said this beautifully. Parang we should create a new culture. And we go back to that later. Ito talaga yung gusto kong emphasize ko. Parang we need to change the culture and the mindsets of young people. That they're not clients of the state. No, they're not only recipients of scholarships, or they're not only used by politicians to dance or hold the tarpaulin during the campaign season. Young people are citizens, right? They have the autonomy and the agency to make decisions for themselves, and they have the energy to assert their place in the decision-making table. And we should provide them the tools and the space for that. Because don't forget, this 2022, young people comprise 52% of registered voters, right? And that is a powerful. So that is my sharing, and I'm looking forward to a fruitful, open discussion later. Maayong hapon sa
All right. Thank you for that, Attorney Neri. That was really packed presentation as well, no? Really explaining the relationship of the citizen, no, with the state. And I think two things, no, that I really got out, no, a beautiful way of putting it. One is really the shift in the mindset, no. When we ask the question, is our role really just about voting? No? And this is not just for young people. I think this is also something that is to be demanded of our teachers to ask themselves as well, and staff, right? Is our role really just to vote? Because, sometimes during the elections, that's really the discourse, right? Register to vote. It's really just about voting, right? But when you start to add the layer of citizenship, we begin, no, to start asking bigger questions. What else do we do? What does it mean to be a citizen? No, and I think Attorney Ray really put a lot of points there, no, on what we can do and what it means to be a citizen. And I really like that idea of demanding better governance. No? At the end of the day, we're just not clients, no, that we are actually empowered to claim, no, to say that this is our space. These are the issues. This is something that you should prioritize. These are the things that we should work on towards the common good. No? And I guess that other point, no, that at the end of the day, the citizen is not just a solo idea, right? Just not a citizen by themselves. No? But the idea of to be a citizen is to also engage in collective action towards the common good. No? I guess as we reflect on elections, no, maybe some of you are thinking, bakit hindi pagboboto yung pinapag-usapan natin ngayong araw? Because I think we need to start expanding ourselves, our conceptualization of what it means to be involved politically. Yes, voting is important, but there's also a bigger dimension, no, of citizenship formation. No? And hopefully we'll be able to talk about that later on. No? And yun, medyo naka-hype na ako. Dami ko na sinasabi. No? So anyway, wonderful content, no, from our first two speakers. But of course, we're not done yet. No? We still have one last formal presentation for our learning session, focusing on the best practices. No? So we're gonna ground it. Ano ba ang mga ginagawa ng mga Catholic schools, or ano yung pwede nating tingnan as we involve and engage ourselves in the 2022 elections. No? So to share with us their experience in the Davao Association of Catholic Schools, we have Miss Angela Prudence Abalos, currently the Community Engagement Head of the Assumption College of Nabunturan. Let's welcome her with a warm round of applause.
Okay, so good afternoon. So we have here, we try to talk about our experiences, the practices that we are doing here. So to start with, where is that? Wait. Okay, so I think this was the last. This was also mentioned by Attorney Ernesto Neri, but this is also something that I would like to start with, no? That we have this one. So CNN News Philippines, that I guess that September 11, no, young Filipino voters accordingly may make a difference in next year's elections, as they now comprise 52% of the total registered voters. Commission on Elections, Director James Jimenez believes. Now, that is how significant the youth vote is in the coming election. Jimenez said himself during an online briefing with the CNN. So this leads me to these thoughts. Is that CEAP a mission? Is it a calling? Is it an opportunity? And of course, is it still a call of the times? More than as a response to the request and challenge of the local church for the Catholic schools to take active role in ensuring the integrity of the electoral process, DACS is an organization of Catholic schools grounded on collaboration, transformation, and communion in the light of our Catholic teachings and most of all, our faith. With this, we have been trying to envision that our students will be fully developed, integrated persons who, as part of the society, must be able to be aware, be concerned, and to contribute, and thereby becoming to be good, responsible Filipino citizens. Collaboration, transformation, and communion are basic processes that can mold our students. So with this, it is a vision of our schools for the church and country and by our students that it will be their innate character that will help them through their lives. And here comes election. Collaboration is the very essence of cooperation for betterment. Transformation is a change in their thinking, in their priorities, as how they will, what are their outlooks, no, in their lives. So when you talk also, this is making our students social beings of this country. Then communion, we have there, which is the getting our students to be involved by sharing and participating in the activities where they are needed, thereby contributing to the welfare of mankind. So going back to these questions, is that a mission? I strongly believe it is an extension of our primary vision mission. Is it a calling? I strongly feel it is an aspiration that it must be shared to our students, for it is their rights, it is their privilege. No, it's their privileges and it is their voice. And is it an opportunity? Well, that I strongly see it as an avenue for our students to actualize collaboration that can somehow transform them and hopefully develop in them intrinsic qualities that can make them productive citizens. And lastly, is it still a call of our times? I strongly agree, because with the situation we are in right now, there are a lot of limitations. Election may not be a priority of our students, and therefore it is a big challenge to direct our students to be proactive. Thus, this is an inspiration for DAX to come together for this upcoming election, to be meaningful for all of us, for this is part of our mission. This is a good opportunity, a calling, especially nowadays. And let us be reminded that our students belong to the 52% of the 63 million registered voters. They truly can make our future depending on how we lead, guide, and direct them through each other. Now, but there is this challenge. How are we going to work on this, okay, to make elections more meaningful for everyone? So I would say the first thing that we should do is we should have to have the right mindset that we are part of the whole. Okay, this endeavor can succeed only if all Catholic schools are one with the church, one with DAX, PPCRV, and all organizations behind this advocacy. The philosophy behind is we should think of parts as a serving, it is serving a purpose. Okay, it is something that is what? That it is fulfilling a function with a greater whole. We should have that kind of mindset, because this is an activity that is contributing to the regional and to the national result of national election. Secondly, DAX and the local church in particular had been giving us the framework that will help us in our engagement and empower our students through their commitment and volunteerism. We just need to be creative on how to do it. Okay? So for the past 4 elections, namely 2013, 2016, 2018, and I think 2019, this acronym had been the means of implementing DAX E-Chunk, and it has been successful. And what is this acronym? Still, it carries E-Chunk. Okay? So we have here E, educate, enrich, empower. So DAX, the local church, especially the Social Action Center of the diocese, have been providing the information, materials that we can use to educate our students that will enrich their knowledge. So we have, I think, some of this, we have there the voters education, the citizenship. Then we have C, coordinate and collaborate. This is an application of a system of proper coordination, okay? So to ensure collaboration. So we have been doing this one also, and I think the people behind is always open, no, for anything. Then we have here H, host and heed. Hosting meetings, orientations, consultations, name it, where schools can heed on certain issues and concerns. Okay? Then we have A, adapt, advocate, and access. So creativity on adaptation has always been a challenge to all schools here. No, they would always tell us, look at your environment and try to study what more can you do. So this is given importance to fulfill the advocacy and for us to have access on solutions and activities. Then we have here model, mentor, motivate. So emphasizing on being a model where schools should always be reminded that they should be non-partisan, they should be neutral, at all times. And it must be radiated in mentoring our students to motivate them to be responsible voters. Then we have the P, proactive, persevere, and partnership. Reminding that we need to be proactive. We have to have that attitude and for us to be able to persevere. And this can be done through welcoming partnership with the government and non-government organization. So you see, this acronym resulted to efficiency and effectiveness on our part. And I know it will still be relevant, no, in the kind of our 2022 voters education campaign. Especially for our advocacy for a credible, going back, honest, accurate, meaningful, and peaceful election with our students' involvement. So just run through, let me share with this framework that we had, what about the school activities that we were able to do? So we have here educate, enrich, empower. So if you can notice, we have there a series of orientations with our students. That includes also the orientation of the Social Action Center of the church. Then we have here for the coordinate and collaborate DAX ECHAMP activities. This is very important, no, to avoid problems. To avoid problems, okay? So we need to coordinate. Even in school, it is properly coordinated with the different offices whereby we should coordinate. Office of the Student Affairs, CIE, no, even the deans, the department heads, all of this, because all activities that were set should be an official activity of our students. And thereby we get support, no? We get support from that. And when you talk again, when we set off our students, the more that we need to have this proper coordination, no, because we try to make sure that there should be no problems. There should be a smooth flow of operations. And this one, host and heed. So the use of all media accounts. We're starting this one already, no? The whole, I think we may not have that radio. We don't have a community radio, but our school is really, because we live in a province, we know for a fact that the radio is really very effective. So we have this radio program. It is aired twice a month. It is hosted by students and teachers, no? And it tackles relevant issues. And of course, that includes now election. Okay, so if you see that here in the picture, we have the COMELEC head, no? Twice already that he's been invited. So he will be discussing about especially the process, the extension that we had, no? So he is invited. So other than that, we, like I said, we're making use of all the media accounts that the school, no, is having. We put there all the what do you call this one? Webinars, virtual reminders, no, countdowns about election. It's all being put there, and again, that is there is this proper coordination with all school offices. Okay, so that is one. So with this, so again, another run through, adopt, advocate, and access. We've been doing this one for quite a long time. No, so because adapting, so our students are actually coming from the different barangays. No, so actually they need our assistance. So we realized that COMELEC should have a satellite in our school. We do that before election. So they will go there. So we facilitate registration. Not only that, we sometimes welcome outsiders, no, because that is already part of our community extension. So with this is the result of the 90%. I think it's more than 90% now. 90% registered voters from our students. And with our talk with the COMELEC, we decided that this will be done yearly. We don't need to wait for election, no? Because it's okay. So it's going to be a yearly activity in partnership with the Office of Student Affairs. Community extension is there. So they will go there yearly. So I think we will achieve 100% registered voters for the next or for the incoming elections. So we find this very effective. Then we have this, I don't have any picture, but I think in our school, we are always making sure that we are having a good rapport with our students. Okay? So with that, we have this informal sharing with our students, discussing politics, election matters, but we do not endorse any name. Instead, we give the proper guidance, okay? Because this is the only way that they can make their wise decisions. We try to develop that in them. Be open-minded, no? So they will be, what do you call this one? Hopefully, they will be making decisions that will be based on their understanding and, of course, our priority, conscience. Then we have here proactive, persevere, and partnership. So if you can see on your screen, for the last elections, and even now, they have been our active partners. No? So you have there the DepEd, you have there the COMELEC, and then, of course, the church. We've been very, with our Rotary here in Compostela Valley. Then you have there other non-government organizations who wants to be of help. Why? Because other than making it more easier, the job, no, it is more fulfilling if you do things with partners, no. And by experience, these partners, we were happy, we were thankful, but they were more thankful for the opportunity to be of service. So I guess that's one thing that we have. This is one strength that we have, no, in our school. So, but more than that, for this 2022 election, considering the pandemic, this is the highlight, okay? The Youth Circles of Discernment, YCD. Okay, so I think all of us is already familiar when we talk about, okay, if we try to get the letter Y there, Circles of Discernment. So for us Catholic schools, we've been very aware of this one. We've been doing this one. So this time, we intend to apply this one in our 2022 election. So you have there more on reflection. And if we think about YCD, no, so going, this, we try to attain this objective. I think this is already done. Campaign for registration. So we intend to organize virtual and if it is possible, actual circles of discernment among students, faculty, and staff. Okay, to see the lights. What are we going to use? What will be our guide? So we will actually, the guide is more on using the Lectio Divina. So I think Lectio Divina is again not something new to us because we are also, we know this one. This is actually, I think, a Latin word. Father, please correct me. Latin word which means divine reading, no? So what do we do there? Actually, it's a slow, thoughtful reading of passage from the Bible. Then another time will be given for reflection, no, thinking about the meaning of the text. Then, of course, we do prayer, a period of prayer to God, trying to listen for the message or wisdom. Then, the most important part, decision. So, but this will be, like as we can see there, this will be done in groups. So there will be again another procedures, a set of procedures on how we are going to do this one. But that is the main concept. So I guess it follows engage students, gospel-based, prayerful, and again provide the youth the opportunity to propose, support, and pursue concrete actions. So because we are there guiding, so I think eventually this is the end result. No, it will just come out naturally. So it's just how we are going to process it. So the framework. Look at the framework. There are three major activities: pre-election, election day, and post-election. Okay? If you will just look at this one, whoa, heavy, no? But because it you are going to consider before, during, and after elections. So can all of this be attained? No, it's a big question. And I'm about to end. I just would like you to look at this one. If YCD encompasses all of this, no, it's something that is so holistic. This is the beauty of YCD, if you will ask me. No, it is something. This will be a part of our CEAP strategies. No, if you look at the concept and look at all of this, it is so beautiful that the effect on our students, I know very well, it's going to be both subjective and objective. No, if we can only be also as effective in implementing it, that I think is attainable. The impact on our students will be truly something personal, and it's going to be life-changing. This is conscience-driven. This is developing the right values. This is exactly what we want in our schools. So the election day, and most especially the post activities, undoubtedly, I think it is attainable. Because it's just like planting seed. We may be doing that during election, but it's like planting seed. The moment it's there, it's going to grow. It will be in them for the years to come. So this is actually what we are trying to implement these 2022 elections. So that's CEAP 22 is something, if you will ask me, we need to do with passion. No, it has to be something that we remember we are a part of the whole. Passion and full of hope. If we look at YCD, the Lord is in the midst of all our actions. It's Him working in us, Him working in our students. And we look forward to a better future with His grace. You see, with His grace. This is more than the usual CEAP activities. because this is spiritual. Spiritual enrichment. This is discernment. This is seeking God's help. This is making e-CHONG a lifeline in this upcoming election. Okay? So this is actually what I wanted to share. So that's e-CHONG CD. I believe this is how I want to end it. Let this be our holy grail. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ma'am Abalus, no, for that presentation of giving the challenge, no, of what schools can actually do this coming 2022 elections, no. Actually, I take 2 points. The first is really the challenge now. I think this is the reality that we face. The challenge of moving our students to actually think about the elections, right? And maybe it's not just the students; it's actually our staff, no, that also has to think about, especially with all the changes, with all the things that's happening because of COVID, there really is that, in a sense, inertia, no, the difficulty in moving people to start talking about politics, and I think that's one point that we really have to look at. So there's a clear challenge, and I think the second, that would be good to think about is the question of collaboration, right? How do we then, if there is such a huge challenge, how do we then bring people together to actually collaborate in implementing programs like the youth discernment circles, right? How do we get people, or how do we get schools to collaborate and share resources to really push, no, for the formation of conscience? And one of my thoughts here really is that this is where the school leadership becomes important, right? For the school leaders who are listening to us here, for the administrators, for the teachers, at some point, it might have to be the role, no, of our administrators to take that push, right? That this is a priority. This is something we need to put emphasis on, that we have to start circles of discernment as part of our conversation this coming 2022 elections, right? So maybe that's something for us to reflect on, no? And I think that's something that Ma'am Angela raised in her presentation. So that was really a great start to our start pa lang, no? To our conversation, the first half of our session today. But at this point, let us take a short break so that our panelists have some breathing space, and for us also to consolidate some questions coming from the audience. And after this, after the short break, we'll have an open forum. We'll be asking questions and we'll have an open discussion with our panel. So please stay tuned while we take a break. Great. Thank you. And we're back again to our learning session today that really focuses on our conversation about the election. So thank you to our very active audience who've been commenting, no, and gave their questions, comments for our wonderful panel today. So do continue to send them in. We'll try our best in the remaining time, around 40 minutes for this conversation, to ask your questions. We'll be spending, again, the rest of the session just unpacking some concepts that I think we need to also talk about, no, as a community together, as one community. But before that, may I remind everyone again to get a certificate for the whole Congress, submit an evaluation form for one session for each day, and a general evaluation form at the end of the conference, which will be posted after the closing mass tomorrow. The evaluation forms are available at the end of each learning session. You will find them in the comment section and will be available, no, until the end of the day. The evaluation link will be there both on Facebook and YouTube. And you can also find it in the program section of our CEAP Congress virtual hall, no, at congress.ceap.org.ph. Of course, as you enjoy this conversation that we're having today, please do continue to support us by sending in stars. Wow, stars talaga. So thank you to those who sent their stars to support the CEAP in our mission. All right. So I think it's great now. No, we'll have a lot of questions to really tackle, and I want to get straight to our forum questions. So now I'll invite our at least our panelists, yes, to join us on the stage. What stage? Virtual stage. All right. So I guess the first question that I want, no, warm up, di nata to warm up, diretsong seryosong usapan. No? Just now, no, in our conversation, we emphasized the importance of the formation of our students, even the formation of our conscience. No? I think in our conversation, there's something that we need to unpack as well in concepts such as how do schools or even individuals position themselves in the upcoming elections? And I'd like to highlight some concepts. For example, neutrality and being non-neutral, right? Or even the question of non-partisan or partisanship. And I'll add another layer to it, hyper-partisanship. So non-partisan, partisan, and hyper-partisanship. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on this. Is it safe? Where should we stand as Catholics, or as Catholics, meaning individuals, but also as Catholic institutions? How should we engage in this spectrum of neutral, non-neutrality, and also non-partisanship and partisanship? I'd like to hear your thoughts about it, and maybe anyone would want to go first about this conversation. You can just raise your hand. Kita ko naman. Titinginan lang tayo dito. Si Brother Ed na nga first nag-smile. Oh, wow.
Wow.
Ay, Rev Ed. Rev Palmenares.
That's a subtle way of calling out already the first person to speak out. Sige. I guess I just want to be clear with that, no? Partisanship, neutrality, those are two very different things. And I guess especially in the language of the Catholic Church and of Catholic education, we often hear that we should be non-partisan. The clerics, Catholic institutions should be non-partisan in the sense that they are not to endorse candidates. That's fine. But of course, that's a question that has no clear-cut answers, especially in situations where the common good and injustice is already at stake, and non-partisanship can actually mean cooperation to agents of injustice. I'd like to draw the attention of our viewers to this wonderful, wonderful article of Father Danny Pilario on his Facebook page. No, Father Danny used to be used to be the dean of St. Vincent School of Theology, where he nuances that wonderfully. And so, why is this different? No, why is partisanship different from neutrality? Based on our identity as Christians, just by reflecting on our Christian faith, we cannot be neutral in the face of abuses to human dignity, injustices, poverty, killings, lies. that's already unchristian. And so that's why even when we talk of formation of conscience, we're not neutral because we're promoting values that are supposed to uphold human dignity, human rights, the dignity of workers, truth, so on and so forth. Diba? Binanggit ko kanina yung principles of Catholic social teachings. And so in that sense, Catholic education should not be neutral. It should be value-driven. Values that are grounded in the gospel proclamation of our Lord Jesus Christ in the kingdom of God. Even when of course, our Lord himself, even if we just look at the very object of our faith, the very person of our faith, he wasn't a neutral person.
Thank you, Reverend Ed, for that initial thoughts. Ma'am Abalus or Attorney Neri, you may want to add. There you go. Si Ma'am Abalus po ba? Nakamute po kayo, Ma'am Angela. Yeah, great.
Actually, when you talk about non-partisan, basically in our school, our sisters is very conservative when it comes to that matter. No, so I think it was something that we really tried to show, no, that we are really non-partisan. But again, the point there is you don't actually wag mong ilantad, no, kung saan ka. But the school is really, I think as a Catholic school, we are also doing some things that our students will also be able to see all aspects, no? So I guess lalabas pa rin yung we are not neutral in that sense because we are trying to enlighten our students on all aspects, no? So I think that is also something that we have to be something that we Catholic schools are really doing because going back again, going back, all of us, we have this vision of really trying to develop holistic development among our students. So, yan yung nakikita ko. We may not be able, I think we're doing that, no? We are active in trying to enlighten our students, but they will not really see that we are trying to endorse somebody.
Yeah.
Just focus on the facts. Facts, these are the things that are happening. Okay? So, that's all.
Yes, thank you for that. No, and I think that ties up, I guess, the idea of truth, right? We state the fact, we state the truth, and we leave it to the discernment of in a sense, no, the students whose conscience we trust has been formed. Attorney Neri, kayo po.
I was thinking more of how we actually operationalize it. Because as I was reflecting as well sa college experience ko, we never really had a discussion on the dichotomy between the partisanship and neutrality. It's something that we have to highlight maybe in our formation programs in the first years, emphasize it in our NSTP as well, for students to really appreciate that entering into a Catholic school, there's certain values that we need to uphold, diba? And if we do not stand against something, parang if we just remain neutral, we are contributing to the injustice. Second is, meron akong I mean, this is, I don't know, this happened to some Ateneo schools though. But, diba, merong event that happened in the burial issue. And then the Ateneo schools, I mean, particularly in Xavier, the school really released a banner outside the gate. No, not a hero. Marco's not a hero. So it was flooded with so much hate in social media. Made me reflect actually about is this what is the sense of the time now? No, is this partisanship? So parang there was that discussion in social media, and of course I know that this is standing for the truth, diba? and also based on the experience of the church and our schools during that time. So that was a flashpoint for me. Parang, you should, I mean, all Jesuit schools, Catholic schools should, at moments of crisis, should choose a side, right? And then the third is, I think, how to operationalize it also in the student level. I could relate that to our own legal aid center, where we really filter out our services. We don't give legal aid to all. We provide services only to those that falls into our merit-based system, where if it's a marginalized sector, a basic sector, if there's a clear injustice. So if somebody asks us for help, na, they're part of the oppressor, we will not render assistance. So in a way, that is communicating to the law students that our center has value systems. No, we have what biases, and that's the kind of lawyer we want to actually form.
Thank you for that, no, Attorney. And I think that emphasizes, no, our conversation really, that at the end of the day, when you say that you take a value system, no, when we promote a certain value system, it's very difficult to not take a side, right? Especially in issues where there are clear injustices, right? So again, if we're neutral in the face of blatant disregard for human life, dignity, right? In a sense, we are cooperating in the evil structure to a certain extent. And so when we talk about justice is important, peace is important, love is important as our principles that guide us, preferential option for the poor, a core principle of the Catholic social teaching. Tama po, no? We need to make the decision to say no to certain things, right? And so if we commit to truth, it must be clear. Now we take a side against lies, right? Like in the sense when they're blatant lies. So, and I like to nuance that. So first is that the values that move us towards, to a certain extent, non-neutrality. Second is I like the tension about the non-partisanship, right? Because at the end of the day, as institutions, there really is a tension, right? That to be able to be credible to a certain extent, right? That the students will listen to us. Hindi tayo pwedeng pumasok na ito na yung kandidato ko tapos magvo-voters end tayo. It doesn't make sense, right? For the student, they will be like, niloloko niyo lang ba ako, di ba? Parang gano'n, right? And in a sense, that's the importance of non-partisanship as institutions. But I'd love to I'd love to know your stance on what it means to be partisan at the individual level, not as institutions, right? But being partisan in the individual level and even campaigning for candidates, right? Because to a certain extent, right, is that a sign of political maturity? What if in your discernment, in your conscience, ang iniisip mo, itong kandidato na ito yung pinaka-align talaga sa value system ko? Should I not be partisan about this, no? And I'd love to throw that out as a question because sometimes I think natatakot tayo, but at the end of the day, if we want to choose good, to a certain extent, you have to choose good people, right? Or good leaders. No? So I'd love to hear your thoughts actually about that. No? So nuancing the personal and institutional at the level of non-partisan and partisan. Baka Attorney, based on your experience, may conclusions ka na ba on that dilemma?
I mean, I am very vocal. In an individual level, I'm very vocal sa aking political preferences. So I feel that it was not a difficult choice to make. And feeling ko, it's a way for me to be a sort of witness to what values I want to see in government. I see that there are certain things that we direly need as a society. So I cannot say that I will not be partisan because it might diminish my credibility or my influence as a teacher or as a director of a center. For me, I made a choice because this particular time requires us to have this stand. I mean, hindi ko pa ma-verbalize to Carlo, no? But I do feel that in some point we are at a very critical juncture in our society now, and it requires us to really to be a witness to that. No, our work becomes a message to others na this is the kind of society we want to live in. So, yan. So far, yan muna yung nare-reflect ko. I'll get back to that when it's more clarity.
Sure. So in a sense, values can lead, no, to a certain extent, making clear stances that even leads to a partisan involvement at the personal level. And I like how you nuanced it, no? That in the sense, I didn't endorse as an institution, but as an individual, I make my stance. Right? And that's something that would be important. Ma'am Angela or Reverend Ed, Ma'am Angela, sige po.
Yes, parang ano naman, ang hirap-hirap sagutin. Pero ganun pa man. Lalo na pag babae, talagang partisan. Totoo yun, no? When you talk about ourselves, we really have our own choices. So, by experience also, because we are also, if we deal with our students, I guess if we have our choice, we can somehow, if you want the word influence, but it's not going to be, again, bluntly, no? There are, siguro the word that I would use there is facilitate lang, no? So, para bang you facilitate by giving them questions that are relevant, that's something that they can think also, no? Siguro magbibigay ka man ng input sa gusto mo, pero more of really just trying to let him see also, no? What is in that choice of yours that is so important, no? Although mahirap yon kasi minsan kadalasan sa flow of talking you can really say ay itong anuhin nyo, but then again we are really guided no, sa ano namin kasi talagang as much as possible kung pwede lang you decide, you see, kung pwede lang makita mo ang nakikita ko, parang yun ang pinaka-challenge, no? That's the effort will be more on trying to let them see what you see, so that they can also be convinced. But then again, the direct endorsement, no? Direct endorsement is something that I think something that we need to control. Self-awareness na lang yan, no? But yes, I can influence. We can influence actually. We can influence. But sa ganung paraan. Because we need to preserve also that in the community, especially here in my place, Assumption is always, no, I think this is the only Catholic school here in our place. They always have that, the people around us, even the LGUs, look up to that context that we are like that.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Ma'am Angela. And I love that perspective because you're right. Like there's that lens of people are looking at you, right? as the school, and there's really that tension. What do I say in this kind of context, right? That will also make sure na you balance the interests of different people in the business. Right?
Yes, Carlo, it's really not easy in our place. Why? Because sometimes politicians will request whether they can use this facility of the school. So we really have to make it a point that no, we're not trying to really, we're not really non-partisan. But then again, going back, we are also not neutral, no? Subtle way lang. Tapos, that yung sinabi ko kanina na yung, I think even in Davao City, all schools naman, Ateneo and everything, they were able to create that image also. So that we are really in that, kumbaga, balance, no? Correct. So dito sa amin, I remember when I had this conversation with the mayor herself, she's a woman, sabi niya talaga, no, Assumption has been there. That is already an institution that we are collaborating with. So, para bang ano ka talaga, konting ingat.
Yes, that's wonderful, and I think that's a very real, no, tension, no, that is also faced, a responsibility of institutions. Reverend Ed, your thoughts?
Sige. Napakaganda yung usapan, no? Especially kasi I think when the question of individual endorsements already come into play. I like how Ma'am Angela mentioned it about the question of influence. Especially, I guess, for a good number of us educators, and we always exercise that kind of influence, diba? And personally, I'm always an advocate for providing and facilitating that democratic space for people's opinions, for people's exchange to emerge. No? Uh, and yet, on the one hand, there's respect, providing that space. Tapos, eto yung tension eh. Yung may igting na parang, uh, there's also that tension that there are certain values that are non-negotiable. I remember there was this Facebook meme, no, that was going around several weeks ago about a kid who was asking her or his parent, nakalimutan ko na, who happens to be a history teacher, and the kid was asking, Ma, pa, why are you teaching this in your history class? Is it about providing the variety of opinions, ganyan, ganyan? And that teacher parent addressing the kid was saying, no, it's not to teach about the plurality of opinions, but that certain values are non-negotiable. So what am I saying? Like, I think in my particular case, I know I am highly discouraged, or really not allowed to do individual endorsements. But the people I work with, my co-faculty in the theology department, people in Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, with you guys in CEAP, we provide that liberty. No? Kaya yun yung, I'm in a delicate position always in this. And especially because our work, for us in particular at SLB, requires that we allow ourselves to be accessible to as many people as possible. And ito yung binabanggit kanina din ni Attorney Tonton about that whole credibility thing. Especially when for some of us, or a good number of us, we're more known because of the institution we're affiliated with than our persons. And to be aware that most people will not make that distinction. So I'm not really giving a clear-cut answer, but I guess what I'm blurting out here are some considerations in relation to that. Because even when we talk with our co-faculty here in the Ateneo, we allow for that, no? But again, like what Ma'am Angela mentioned, that awareness of influence, and how in that particular situation or context, whether you intend it or not, you're carrying also the weight of an institution. And perhaps you cannot speak on behalf of that institution. So yun yung medyo doon. And yet the other pole of the tension is again the commitment to the values.
Thank you. That was such a wonderful comment, Rev Ed. For the audience, I hope you don't expect to come out of this session also with clear-cut decisions on things. I think part of our discernment as Catholics is always to dwell in tensions, right? And it's important. I love how Rev Ed said that you're aware, but even in your awareness, when you make a decision, that's also encouraged, right? To a certain extent. If at the end of the day you find your peace at the end of the discernment, saying that no, I have to make a stance because this is my value system. And I think that's something that we have to respect also for each other, no? As individuals. Basta hindi lang i-drag yung institution, di ba? Na parang ito yung official stance ng institution. But in our individuality also, I think that's also something, part of our political maturity is to make, wow, thank you. That was just the first question. No? And I think there's a lot that we discussed. I guess I just want to look at the complications now of elections. Understandably, online, the social media, there's a lot of things that goes around. And we've already heard how young people are always in TikTok, madaming nag-i-influence doon in terms of opinion. So maybe I just love to hear your thoughts. What do you feel are some of the key challenges in this coming election? Disinformation, etc. Maybe you identify others. And what can schools actually do to mitigate these challenges? So we have challenges. What are maybe your top challenge for you? And then maybe you have proposals of what schools can actually do to mitigate this challenge. Anyone can go ahead first. Does anyone? You can just raise your hand, identify a challenge you want to raise. Maybe you have suggestions for schools that we can take. Anyone? Mapapa-voluntold ako dito sa ganito. Wala sa joke. Wala talaga. No one wants to go first.
Ayun, sige, since binanggit mo na rin naman na Carlo, no? Social media and disinformation. I guess our schools can really find ways to be able to address that. I know of research units of schools, community extension programs, student organizations that have managed to organize themselves to do some fact checking, to produce content. Our kids are good at that. No? Our students are really good at that, whether it's TikTok, YouTube, infographics for Facebook or Twitter. But what I'd like to emphasize also is, and because we've been hearing reports about this, no, outside of social media, there's massive disinformation going with certain groups going house to house in far-flung barangays, trying to convince them that a certain precedent of past and a certain period of our time was not as horrifying as we were told, no? And especially, I guess, for schools in low-risk areas who can be the beacons of clarifying and fact-checking. This is something their students can take on. A few weeks ago, I talked to a former colleague from Ateneo de Zamboanga who already is teaching in a public school right now, and that's his personal advocacy. Just fighting that disinformation that even his own students have been recipients of, diba, from their parents, from their lola, or from their kapitbahay, and to try to engage in critical thinking. That's one clear opportunity that presents itself to a lot of schools right now. So again, whether it's online or offline, but to combat disinformation with critical thinking and with the right history.
Yeah, I think that's. Thank you for that, Rev Ed. So, anyone else next? Abados or Attorney?
I think student governments can really play a vital role. Aside from embedding digital literacy or digital citizenship in our core curriculum, student governments can do a role, no, in mobilizing youth organizations.
Information. Now we can actually do it in school. I think we just need to really be also proactive and let them feel. And then tayo mismo, we should really be aware of the different issues, no, the different issues, and maybe counter it also in our what do you call this one, media accounts, no? Kasi gano'n naman ang nangyayari. Parang you just need to let them see the other side of the coin. So we can do that in our media accounts. But I think ang isang nag-aano sa akin, one thing that really when you talk about key challenges is, I think yung lack of interest somehow ng bang estudyante when it comes to voting, etc. No, maybe because they are uneducated. Uneducated when it comes to this matter. So that is why we really need to work hard, if you will ask me personally, on really giving them the needed information regarding election, especially in casting their votes. No? So I guess that's one thing na nakikita ko, and I think hindi na yung another thing na if you please allow me to share something that also I would like to be answered by you, no? Yung bang in these times what bothers me at my age, no, para bang the trend nowadays is the platform of our candidates is not that important anymore.
Really.
Para bang if I will just look at how they do it now, it's more of they give more weight on the parties. The party that they belong, sino itong mga partidong ito, no? Forgetting the very essence of how important the platform is. So siguro I somehow doon ako nag-iisip, no? Because if you will just try to listen to our students nowadays, they are more well informed of the different parties. Si Sarah, ito si ganito, itong partido ni ganito. But they do not even know what that party is all about, what it carries, what values it has. And I think it's something that we have to work on. No? So I see that as something na para bang it's a challenge.
Thank you for that. No, I think the personalities, the parties are trumping the platforms, which I think is also something that we can explore as schools. So how do we actually deepen the conversations when it comes to really talking about the issues? I like the point that you raised, Ma'am Angela, about like the disengagement of young people. Maybe at one level, it's the lack of awareness, no, on what's happening. Maybe they have disengaged, no, in the sense uneducated in that aspect. But I think another aspect of that is a sense of disempowerment, no. There is actually a beautiful question that came from our audience today. Sabi ni Richard Vergara, may I ask your thoughts, experiences about this? Maraming kabataan at maging mga magulang nagsasabi, wala naman rin mangyayari sa Pilipinas kahit sino pang maluklok or parehas-parehas lang din. And I think that comment, no, captures a big aspect of where young people are feeling, or even not just young people, even older people who've seen so many election cycles at parehas pa rin yung nangyayari, right? What's your response to this, no? What are your thoughts on this? And maybe you can already, since naubusan na tayo ng oras, you can already also tie up, no, your closing message, no, for everyone in our audience today. So what are your response to this sense na parehas-parehas yung naman, walang magbabago? Sige, go, Attorney Neri. Ang laki ng smile niyo po. Sa smiles talaga ako gumagamit ng sinigulo.
I think, di ba, we are called to be merchants of hope. I think that's the term, or bearers of hope, messengers of hope in our institutions. I keep telling my students now that when we have discussions on inequality, poverty, I keep on reminding them that the Philippines is relatively a young country. I mean, we cannot expect that our institutions become stronger. Parang hindi siya instantly came out of Independence Day na strong siya agad. We have to go through this very long process of nation building. And I keep on reminding them that if you look at the history of other nations, the building of institutions very slow and very long. And I just tell them that I think you should rest with the idea na you are contributing in your way. Particularly when I talk to law students. When you serve in the government, you help develop implementing rules and regulations, a code of conduct. You are partaking of this slow work of institution building. And rest in that idea that you're contributing something. So in that respect, I keep on telling them that it's slow, right? But at least you're making a difference in your sphere of control. Now, in terms of that feeling of disempowerment, Carlo, parang, di ba, yung hindi naman nothing will change. I keep on going back to a story of how young people, even if their interest might not be, hindi sila yung type na want to get involved into political discussions. Yung type nila is they want to have a very good skateboarding park. That can actually be a space for them to, for youth leaders to open a space for them to discuss. What am I trying to say here? Parang ito, mga young people, their fun time is skateboarding, no? And then if there is an effort on the part of the youth council, perhaps to invite them to a meeting and ask them if they want to have a good skateboard park in the heart of the city. Do you want that? No, parang if you provide them a space to participate in that, you provide them the voice na pwede sila magsabi, we want this park, ito yung design, you are actually in a way communicating to them that their voice matters. And when they eventually see that park, they would see the result of their participation. So parang in those instances, you are giving in a way a picture for them na yun yung prutas ng kanilang engagement, yung participation nila. It might not be the typical na, you join in a meeting with this serious with the agenda, pero yung space, I think it will give them a sense of hope and concrete talaga yung output ng kanilang participation. So, yan.
Thank you for that, Attorney Neri. Yeah, maybe Brother Ed or Ma'am Angela. Brother Ed na lang siguro and Ma'am Angela for the closing call.
Sige. So thank you, Carlo. That was that's kind of an interesting question to end with, and I'd rather see that not so much as not just as maybe a failure of what we've been trying to do the past few years or generations, but maybe to continually ask ourselves na maybe there are voices that we keep marginalizing in the process. Kung kaya't yung sistema tila pumapabor lamang din para sa iilan. I'm reminded of this clip from Ma'am Litzy Carolino's documentary na they were talking, it was campaign season, and this group of informal settlers along the railroads. Tapos parang nagsasabi yung isang nanay doon, parang anong pakialam namin dyan? Kahit si ganito yung presidente, nandito pa rin kami. Nakailang presidente na nandito pa rin kami. And I think that's an invitation for our schools. No, I asked this question already earlier. Can our schools, our Catholic schools, help articulate what is an election agenda that is worth pursuing? This comes back to mind again because also Ma'am Angela mentioned this earlier, how our politics, our choices are often centered on the candidates but not on the platforms and the issues. But there is, I think, an invitation in the academic community, in our schools, universities, to engage in a process of discernment that includes as many stakeholders as possible. Because whether we like it or not, or whether we acknowledge this or not, our schools are a safe space. Ideally, they should be a safe space for these discussions, to clarify our values, and then later on to clarify our issues, and then to allow people who have been marginalized, who have been wronged for several decades, for their voices to be heard, and allow that to be the values, the issues that we rally behind in elections, and propose these to the candidates, rather than just allow ourselves to wait for what the candidates have to offer. And this again kind of ties back into that program we have in Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, which I hope our participants here can take advantage of, and feel free to contact us on our Facebook page for that. I think CEAP will be extending once again the invitation to your school heads. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rev. And of course, Miss Angela, to share your final thoughts and comments as well to the rest. Nakamute po kayo, Angela.
Okay, so I think yung sinabi na ganun pa rin, yung sinabi mo, Carlo, actually, even among us, we sometimes have that comment, no, na parang walang nangyayari. But then again, if you will ask me how are we going to address this one again, I think we just need to go back to basic. Basic in the sense that we just need to let our students know that a vote is a right. A vote is a privilege, and a vote is a voice. That is something that we need to somehow let them realize and treasure it, because we have to let them see that their vote can make a change. It may be a cliche, but that's reality. Again, it's what it is for, no? So kaya nga kung tatanungin mo, we always go back to basic, and the attitude of our students, if they have such comments, again, it's a question of attitude. So, kahit ano pa sabihin natin, if I am the teacher, mag-iisip pa rin ako anong nangyari? Ba't ganyan siya mag-isip? Okay? So, again, basically sa atin, if they are like that, we have something to do with it. Bakit siya naging ganon? No? So, how did we form these students? How come they are like that? So, it's always something that when you talk of these things, value formation again come in. Okay? Value formation, and again, it will always go back. We have to really, yung pinagsasabi natin kanina, no? That they should be they are there, they have to be. Okay, if I cannot forget, I'm sorry, but ganito na ang edad ko, no? I think Ateneo was very, very effective in inculcating in me in my personality, that mantra of meant for others. Okay? So no matter what I do, where I am, it's something in there in your system. The same is true. So if we are able to develop the right values in our students, it will be their being. They will not have this kind of attitude in the future. So I guess the challenge will always go back. This is election time. We still have enough time. No, maybe again, think of something how we can somehow. But if you will ask me, it should have been done before. No, so this is something that we need to really give importance. No, as every day, as they are with us, we have this obligation to develop them according to what or how we want them to be. But then again, it's not late. The e-chunk is there. So for
Sige
this
po.
equation, probably we have to again use e-chunk. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Angela. And grabe, gipin na po tayo sa oras. But thank you so much, Reverend
That's it,
Colmenares,
Carlo.
Attorney Neri, and Ms. Avalos for that wonderful, wonderful panel discussion. Palakpakan pa naman po natin sila. Thank you so much. So again, a lot has been talked about in the span of 2 hours, and I hope that we will take some time to reflect and write down your thoughts for today's session. On behalf of the CEAP President, Sister Marisa Viri, RVM, and the CEAP Board of Trustees, and Mr. Jose Alan Arellano, the Executive Director, and of course the National Secretariat, this is Miguel Carlo of Badina saying thank you and good afternoon to everyone and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you.